The smell of pine needles and frost always reminded Rose of the year she stopped believing in second chances. It was December 19th, and Missoula, Montana wore its winter like an old wound. Beautiful, cold, unforgiving. Rose's fingers were numb as she arranged white poinsettias in the lobby of Hartley & Cross Corporate Tower, the tallest building in downtown Missoula, where glass met sky and wealth whispered through marble halls. She worked for Petal & Thorn, a small floral shop that supplied arrangements for corporate clients during the holidays. This contract was the only thing keeping her business alive. But before we step deeper into this memory, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from. Like this video, so this story reaches more hearts, and subscribe to follow the next journeys. Rose had learned not to look up too much in places like this. Buildings like Hartley & Cross weren't made for people like her, people who still had soil under their nails and drove a decade-old truck with a heater that only worked on Tuesdays. She was 28, dark-haired, quiet in the way women become when they've been hurt in public. 3 years ago, her ex-fiancé had emptied their joint account 2 weeks before their wedding and disappeared with a woman Rose had considered her closest friend. The betrayal hadn't just broken her heart. It had bankrupted her, stolen her faith in her own judgment, left her afraid to be seen. Now she kept her head down, her world small, her heart locked. The corporate tower smelled like expensive cologne and printer ink. Rose worked quickly, replacing the dying arrangements near the elevators with fresh white roses and evergreen branches wrapped in gold ribbon. It was the kind of work that made her invisible, present but unnoticed, necessary but not valued. Christmas music drifted from hidden speakers, too cheerful, too bright. She hated this time of year. The whole world pretended to be warm while she felt frozen from the inside out. She was securing the last arrangement when she heard the quiet scrape of a mop bucket. A man in a gray janitor's uniform was working near the far wall, moving slowly, methodically. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that needed a cut and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to rest. There was something careful in the way he moved, as though he were trying not to take up too much space. Rose had seen him before, always in the early mornings or late evenings, always alone, always quiet. Their eyes met for half a second. He looked away first. Rose told herself it didn't matter. She finished her work, gathered her tools, and headed toward the service elevator. But as she passed him, she noticed his hands. Rough, yes, but not the hands of someone who'd spent a lifetime cleaning floors. There were faint scars along his knuckles, and his grip on the mop handle was too tight, like he was holding on to something other than wood. She didn't know why she stopped. "Merry Christmas," she said quietly. He looked up, startled. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, almost reluctantly, he nodded. "Yeah, you too." His voice was low, scraped raw at the edges. Rose left before the silence could grow awkward. But as the elevator doors closed, she glanced back and saw him still standing there, staring at the space where she'd been, as though she'd said something that hurt. Outside, the snow was falling again. Missoula's Christmas lights blinked red and green against the twilight, and Rose pulled her coat tighter, her breath clouding in the frozen air. She didn't know his name. She didn't know why he looked so tired. She didn't know that the man in the janitor's uniform was Lucas Hartley, heir to Abi, million-dollar empire, son of the man whose name was on the building, or that he'd been working in disguise for 3 months, trying to figure out who had embezzled $4 million from his family's company. She didn't know that he'd lost his ability to trust anyone. She didn't know that he'd stopped going home for Christmas 2 years ago. And she didn't know that the quiet, Merry Christmas she'd offered him was the first kind thing anyone had said to him in weeks. All she knew was that something about him felt familiar, like recognizing your own loneliness in someone else's eyes. Rose came back 3 days later with arms full of Fraser fir and red amaryllis. December 22nd. The tower was quieter now. Most employees had left early for the holiday weekend, and the building felt hollow, echoing. She liked it better this way. Fewer people meant fewer chances to be reminded that she didn't belong here, that her worn canvas jacket and secondhand boots marked her as temporary, replaceable. She set up her supplies near the massive Christmas tree in the main lobby, a 20-foot blue spruce wrapped in white lights and gold ornaments that probably cost more than her monthly rent. The property management company had requested additional garlands for the railings, wreaths for every floor, and centerpieces for the executive suites. It was good money. Money she desperately needed. Her shop was 2 months behind on rent, and her landlord had stopped pretending to be patient. Rose worked slowly, carefully, weaving fresh pine and red berries into a garland. Her fingers moved with practiced grace, the only part of her life she still trusted. Flowers didn't lie. They didn't pretend. They bloomed or they died, and there was honesty in that. She didn't hear him approach. "You do this every year?" Rose startled, nearly dropping the wire cutters. Lucas stood a few feet away, mop in hand, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't frowning either. He just looked present, like he was actually seeing her. "For the past 3 years," Rose said, her voice careful. "You work here year-round?" "Something like that." He moved closer, setting the mop aside. Up close, she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, the shadow beneath his eyes, the tightness in his jaw. He looked like a man who hadn't slept well in months. "Can I help?" he asked quietly. Rose blinked. "You don't have to." "I know." There was something in his voice, something raw and earnest, that made her pause. She glanced at his hands again. Strong hands, careful hands. "Okay," she said softly. "You can hold the garland while I wire it." They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the rustle of evergreen and the distant hum of the building's heating system. Lucas held the garland steady while Rose wrapped copper wire around the railing, her fingers brushing his once, twice. Each time, she felt a small shock of warmth, unexpected and unnerving. "You're good at this," he said after a long stretch of quiet. "I've had practice." "You own the flower shop?" Rose hesitated. "Yeah, Petal and Thorn. It's small. Just me, mostly." "That takes guts." She looked up at him, surprised. Most people didn't understand how hard it was, how terrifying it was to build something alone, to risk everything on a dream that could collapse at any moment. "Or stupidity," she said with a faint, sad smile. "No," Lucas said firmly. "Guts." Something shifted between them then, subtle, fragile, like the first crack in ice. Rose felt it in her chest, a small flutter of something she'd forgotten how to name. She looked away quickly, focusing on the garland, her heart beating too fast. "What about you?" she asked, keeping her voice light. "You like working here?" Lucas was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, almost bitter. "I'm figuring some things out." Rose didn't push. She understood the need for privacy, for space to carry your wounds without explanation. They finished the garland in comfortable silence, and when it was done, Lucas stepped back, hands in his pockets, looking at the railing as though he'd accomplished something important. "Thank you," Rose said. "Anytime." He said it like he meant it. Rose gathered her tools, hyper-aware of his presence, of the way he lingered as though he didn't want her to leave yet. She should go. She should keep her distance. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. But when she reached the elevator, she turned back. "Lucas, right?" she asked. "I saw your name tag last time." He nodded slowly. "I'm Rose." "I know," he said. Then, realizing how that sounded, he added quickly, I saw it on your van, outside." Rose felt heat rise to her cheeks. She pressed the elevator button, suddenly flustered. "Well, Merry Christmas, Lucas." "Merry Christmas, Rose." The elevator doors closed, but not before she saw the smallest hint of a smile on his face. Genuine, unguarded, and heartbreakingly brief. Outside, the snow fell heavier now, blanketing Missoula in white. Christmas lights glowed in every window, and carolers sang somewhere down the street. Rose sat in her cold truck for a long moment, staring at the tower, thinking about the way Lucas had looked at her. Not with pity, not with judgment, but with something closer to recognition, like he understood what it meant to be broken. Christmas Eve arrived with brutal cold and a sky the color of stone. Rose hadn't planned to return to the tower. Her contract was finished, the arrangements delivered. But at 6 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from the property manager. Emergency request. Executive suite needs replacement centerpiece for tomorrow's board meeting. Double rate. Can you do it tonight? She almost said no. She wanted to go home, lock her doors, and pretend Christmas didn't exist. But double rate meant she could pay her overdue electric bill, maybe buy herself a few more weeks before eviction became inevitable. So she loaded her van with white roses, silver branches, and eucalyptus, and drove back through the snow. The building was nearly empty. Most of the lights were off, and the silence felt heavier now, oppressive. Rose took the service elevator to the 14th floor, where the executive offices occupied an entire wing of glass and dark wood. The air smelled like leather and old money. She found the conference room and set to work, arranging the centerpiece with shaking hands. It wasn't just the cold. It was the date. December 24th. 3 years ago, on Christmas Eve, she discovered the empty bank account, the note on the kitchen counter, the sudden, violent absence of the future she'd believed in. "I'm sorry. I can't do this. Don't look for me." Rose's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forcing the tears back, forcing herself to breathe. "You okay?" She spun around. Lucas stood in the doorway, still in his janitor's uniform, holding a toolbox. He looked startled to see her, but also relieved. "I'm fine," Rose said quickly, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Just allergies." Lucas didn't move. He set the toolbox down slowly, carefully, and stepped into the room. "You're a terrible liar," he said quietly. Rose laughed, a brittle, broken sound. "Yeah, I know." He didn't ask what was wrong. Instead, he crossed to the window and looked out at the city, at the snow falling like static against the dark. For a long time, neither of them spoke. "I hate Christmas," Rose said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "Me too." She looked at him, surprised. Lucas exhaled slowly, his breath fogging the glass. 2 years ago, I found out someone I trusted, someone I loved, had been stealing from my family. Not just money, secrets, contracts. They sold us out to our biggest competitor, nearly destroyed everything my father built." Rose's chest tightened. "Who was it?" "My brother." The word landed like a stone. Lucas didn't look at her, but she could see the pain carved into his profile, the way his jaw clenched, the way his hands curled into fists at his sides. "He was my best friend," Lucas continued, his voice raw. "We built this company together, and he looked me in the eye every single day while he gutted us from the inside. When I finally confronted him, he didn't even apologize. He just laughed, said I was naive, forever trusting him." Rose felt something crack open inside her chest. Recognition, kinship, the terrible intimacy of shared wounds. 3 years ago, she said softly, My fiancé emptied our joint account and disappeared with my best friend. 2 weeks before our wedding. I lost everything. My savings, my apartment, my faith in my own judgment. I haven't let anyone close since. Lucas turned to face her fully now, and the look in his eyes was almost unbearable. Grief and understanding, and something dangerously close to tenderness. "I'm sorry," he said. "Me too." They stood there, two people wrapped in silence and snow and the weight of betrayal, and Rose felt something she hadn't felt in years. The quiet, terrifying possibility of being understood. "Why are you here?" she asked. "On Christmas Eve. Alone." Lucas hesitated. She could see him weighing the truth, deciding how much to risk. "I'm trying to find out who else was involved," he said carefully. "My brother didn't work alone. Someone in this building helped him. I've been working undercover for 3 months, watching, listening, trying to figure out who I can trust." Rose's breath caught. "You're not really a janitor." "No." "Then who are you?" Lucas looked at her for a long, aching moment. "Someone who doesn't know how to trust anymore," he said quietly. "Someone who's afraid he'll never figure it out." Rose stepped closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Gravity, longing, the pull of shared pain. They were only a few feet apart now, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes, the faint scar above his left eyebrow. "I get it," she whispered. "I know you do." The air between them felt charged, fragile, like something precious and breakable. Lucas lifted his hand slowly, hesitantly, and for a moment Rose thought he might touch her face. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but then his phone buzzed. The spell broke. Lucas stepped back, pulling the phone from his pocket, his expression shifting, shuddering, closing. He glanced at the screen and his jaw tightened. "I have to go," he said, his voice suddenly distant. "I'm sorry." He left before Rose could say anything, his footsteps echoing down the empty hall. Rose stood alone in the conference room, surrounded by white roses and silver branches, her chest aching with something that felt dangerously close to hope. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering Missoula in a blanket of white. And somewhere in the distance, church bells rang for midnight mass. Christmas morning came cold and silent. Rose woke in her small apartment above the flower shop, alone, staring at the ceiling. She'd barely slept. Her mind kept returning to Lucas, the raw honesty in his voice, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered, the moment his hand had almost touched her face. She told herself it was dangerous. She told herself she couldn't afford to feel this way again, but her heart wasn't listening. At noon, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" "Rose." Lucas's voice tight with urgency. "I need your help." Her pulse spiked. "What's wrong?" "Can you meet me at the tower? Now?" 20 minutes later, Rose pulled into the empty parking garage, her breath visible in the freezing air. Lucas was waiting near the service entrance, dressed in dark jeans and a heavy coat, not the janitor's uniform. He looked different somehow, sharper, more real. "What's going on?" Rose asked. "I found something," Lucas said, his voice low. "Evidence. Financial records hidden in the maintenance files. Someone's been siphoning money for months. Small amounts. Hard to trace. But I know who it is now." "Who?" Lucas hesitated. "The property manager. The one who hired you." Rose's stomach dropped. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. But I need proof. Physical proof. There's a locked office on the 15th floor." "I think the original documents are there, but I can't get in without triggering the security system." "Then how?" "You have a master key," Lucas said, "for the floral deliveries. It opens most of the interior doors." Rose stared at him. You want me to help you break into an office? I want you to help me find the truth. She should have said no. She should have walked away. This wasn't her fight, wasn't her business. But when she looked into Lucas's eyes, she saw something that made her chest ache. Desperation, yes, but also trust. He was trusting her. After everything he'd been through, he was choosing to believe in her. "Okay," Rose whispered. "I'll help." They took the service elevator to the 15th floor. The building was eerily quiet, every sound amplified. The hum of the elevator, the soft click of Rose's key in the lock, the creak of the office door opening. Inside, the office was small and cluttered. Filing cabinets, stacks of invoices, a desk covered in paperwork. Lucas moved quickly, methodically, searching through drawers while Rose kept watch at the door. "Here," Lucas said suddenly, pulling a folder from the bottom drawer. "Jesus, it's worse than I thought." He spread the documents across the desk, bank statements, transfer records, emails. Rose leaned over his shoulder, her heart pounding. "This goes back 2 years, Lucas said, his voice shaking with anger. "He's been working with my brother the whole time. They took millions." Rose's breath caught. "Lucas. I trusted him. I recommended him for this position. I thought..." His voice cracked. "I thought I was finally getting better at reading people." Rose reached out instinctively, her hand covering his. "You are," she said firmly. "You trusted me. And I'm here." Lucas looked up at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes was devastating. "Why?" he asked hoarsely. "Why would you help me? You barely know me." "Because I know what it's like to feel like you can't trust anyone," Rose said quietly. "And I know what it's like to be alone. And I don't want either of us to feel that way anymore." For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them. The warmth of her hand on his, the intensity of his gaze, the fragile, terrifying possibility blooming between them. Then the door slammed open. The property manager stood in the doorway, his face twisted with rage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Lucas stepped in front of Rose instinctively, protectively. "I know everything, Derek. It's over." Derek laughed, cold, bitter. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Playing janitor, pretending to be one of us. But you're still just a spoiled rich kid who doesn't understand how the real world works." "The real world?" Lucas's voice was dangerous now. "You stole from people who trusted you. You helped my brother destroy my family. Your family destroyed itself," Derek spat. "Your father's been bleeding this company dry for years. I just took what I was owed." "You weren't owed anything." Derek's eyes shifted to Rose, cold and calculating. "And you. I should have known. Always poking around, always watching. What did he promise you? Money? A promotion?" "Nothing," Rose said, her voice steady despite her fear. "I'm here because it's the right thing to do." Derek lunged forward, grabbing for the documents. Lucas moved faster. He shoved Derek back, hard, and the man stumbled, crashing into the filing cabinet. The sound echoed through the empty floor like a gunshot. "Don't," Lucas said, his voice deadly calm. "Don't make this worse." Derek stood slowly, breathing hard, his face flushed with fury. "You have no idea what you've done. Your brother's going to destroy you for this." "Let him try." Security arrived 10 minutes later. Real security, called by Lucas. Derek was escorted out in handcuffs, still screaming threats. Rose stood against the wall, shaking, her heart racing with adrenaline and fear, and something that felt almost like triumph. When the police finally left, Lucas turned to her. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "I shouldn't have dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me," Rose said. "I chose to be here." Lucas stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. "Why?" Rose's throat tightened. She could lie. She could protect herself, keep her walls up, stay safe. But she was so tired of being safe. "Because I think I'm starting to trust you," she whispered. "And that terrifies me." Lucas exhaled shakily, and when he reached for her hand this time, she didn't pull away. "Me too," he said softly. "Me too." They sat in Lucas's truck in the empty parking garage, the heater running, snow falling softly outside. Neither of them had spoken for several minutes. Rose's hands were still shaking. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving behind exhaustion and the strange, disorienting awareness that everything had changed. She'd crossed a line tonight, helped a man she barely knew break into an office, confronted a criminal, put herself at risk, and she didn't regret it. "I need to tell you the truth," Lucas said quietly, breaking the silence. Rose looked at him. "My full name is Lucas Hartley," he continued, his voice careful, measured. "My father owns this building. He owns half of Missoula. I'm the VP of Operations for Hartley and Cross Development, or I was, before I went undercover." Rose's breath caught. She'd suspected. Pieces of the puzzle had been clicking into place all night, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a shock. "You're rich," she said flatly. "Yes." "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything." Rose laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "That's the same thing." "I know." Lucas turned to face her fully, his expression anguished. "I know, and I'm sorry. But I couldn't risk telling anyone the truth. Not after what my brother did. I didn't know who I could trust. And now? Now I trust you," Lucas said, his voice raw. "I trust you more than I've trusted anyone in 2 years. And I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but why me?" Rose interrupted, her voice shaking. "Why did you trust me?" Lucas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was so soft she almost didn't hear it. "Because you looked at me like I was human," he said. "Not like I was a Hartley, not like I was a paycheck or a connection or a means to an end. Just human. And I haven't felt that in so long." Rose's chest ached. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to protect herself, to walk away before she got hurt again. But when she looked into Lucas's eyes, all she saw was honesty. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. The last time I trusted someone, they destroyed me. I know. How do I know you won't do the same?" Lucas reached out slowly, carefully, and took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused, steady. "You don't," he said honestly. "You can't know. Trust doesn't come with guarantees. It's just a choice, a leap. And I can't promise I won't hurt you. But I can promise I'll never lie to you again. And I can promise I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of the faith you're putting in me." Tears spilled down Rose's cheeks, hot and sudden. She didn't try to stop them. "I haven't let anyone close in 3 years," she said, her voice breaking. "I've been so lonely, and so angry, and so afraid that if I open up again, I'll just get destroyed all over again." "Then don't open up all the way," Lucas said gently. "Just crack the door. Just a little. And let me prove to you that not everyone leaves." Rose looked at him, really looked at him. At the exhaustion in his face, the scars on his knuckles, the way he held her hand like it was something precious. She thought about the way he'd stepped in front of her when Derek burst in, the way he'd trusted her with his secrets, the way he'd been so careful, so respectful, so achingly kind. "I don't even know if I remember how," she whispered. "Then we'll figure it out together." Rose closed her eyes, trembling. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to protect herself, to slam the door shut before it was too late. But there was another voice too. Quieter, softer, buried beneath years of pain. What if this time is different? What if he's telling the truth? What if you're allowed to be happy? Rose opened her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. Lucas's breath hitched. "Okay? Okay," she said again, stronger this time. "I'm choosing to trust you. I'm choosing to believe you. And if you break my heart, Lucas Hartley, I will never forgive you." "I won't," Lucas said fiercely. "I swear to God I won't." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Rose didn't pull away. She leaned in too, closing the distance between them, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home, soft and tentative and achingly real. The kiss was brief, gentle, but it carried the weight of everything they'd survived. Betrayal and loneliness and the terrifying courage it took to try again. When they pulled apart, Lucas rested his forehead against hers, his hand cupping her cheek. "Merry Christmas, Rose," he whispered. Rose laughed through her tears. "Merry Christmas, Lucas." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing Missoula in white, and for the first time in 3 years, Rose felt something other than cold. She felt warm. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a strange, fragile blur. Derek had been arrested. The evidence Lucas and Rose uncovered led to a full investigation, not just into Derek, but into Lucas's brother, James, who had fled to Canada but was now facing extradition. The media descended like vultures, eager for the story of betrayal and corporate espionage within one of Montana's most prominent families. Lucas's father called a family meeting. Rose wasn't invited, but Lucas asked her to come anyway. "I need you there," he'd said over the phone, his voice tight with anxiety. "I need someone who actually gives a damn about me, not just the company." So on December 30th, Rose drove to the Hartley estate, a sprawling ranch-style mansion in the foothills outside Missoula, surrounded by snow-covered pines and wrought iron gates. She felt desperately out of place in her worn jeans and canvas jacket, but Lucas met her at the door and took her hand, and that made everything a little easier. The house was stunning. High ceilings, exposed beams, a massive stone fireplace, but it felt cold, empty, despite the Christmas decorations still hanging from every surface. Lucas's father, Richard Hartley, sat in the study, a tall, silver-haired man with sharp eyes and a mouth like a blade. He looked at Rose with barely concealed disdain. "This is her?" he asked Lucas. "The florist?" "Her name is Rose," Lucas said firmly. "And yes, she's the one who helped me find the evidence." Richard's gaze flicked over Rose, assessing, dismissive. "I see." Rose forced herself to meet his eyes, refusing to shrink. "Mr. Hartley," she said evenly, "it's nice to meet you." "Sit," Richard said, ignoring her greeting. "We have business to discuss." They sat. Lucas kept Rose's hand in his, a silent anchor. Richard leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "The investigation is moving forward. Derek's cooperating, giving up names, locations, accounts. But James..." He paused, his jaw tightening. "James is still my son, and I won't let this family be torn apart any more than it already has been." "What are you saying?" Lucas asked, his voice careful. "I'm saying we settle, quietly. We pay back the investors, restructure the board, and we move on. No criminal charges against James, no public trial, no more damage to the Hartley name." Lucas went very still. "You want to protect him?" "I want to protect this family." "He stole from you," Lucas said, his voice rising. "He betrayed you. He betrayed all of us. And you want to just let it go. I want to stop the bleeding, Richard snapped. A trial will drag this out for years. It'll cost millions. It'll destroy what's left of our reputation. Is that what you want? I want justice. Justice is a luxury we can't afford. The room fell silent, heavy with tension. Rose could feel Lucas trembling beside her, could see the conflict tearing him apart. Loyalty to his father, anger at his brother, the desperate need to do the right thing. No, Lucas said quietly. Richard's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? No, Lucas repeated, louder this time. I'm not covering this up. I'm not protecting James. He made his choices. He has to face the consequences. If you pursue this, you're out, Richard said coldly. I'll remove you from the company. I'll cut you off. You'll have nothing. Rose's heart stopped. She looked at Lucas, terrified. Not for herself, but for him. She knew what this company meant to him, knew how hard he'd worked, knew that losing it would devastate him. But Lucas didn't hesitate. Then I'm out, he said. Richard stood, his face flushed with anger. You're making a mistake. Maybe, Lucas said, but it's my mistake to make. He stood too, pulling Rose up with him. Come on, we're leaving. They walked out together, through the cold, empty halls, past the Christmas tree that no one had bothered to turn on. Outside, the air was freezing, the sky dark and heavy with coming snow. Lucas stood on the front steps, breathing hard, his hands shaking. Are you okay? Rose asked quietly. Lucas laughed, sharp, broken. I just lost my family, my job, everything I've worked for. I know, but I don't regret it. He turned to her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I don't regret choosing integrity over loyalty. I don't regret doing the right thing. And I don't regret having you here with me. Rose's throat tightened. What are you going to do now? Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled, genuine, unguarded, and heartbreakingly hopeful. I have no idea, he said. But I think that's okay. I think maybe it's time to build something new, something that's actually mine. Rose stepped closer, her hand finding his. You're not alone, you know. You have me. Lucas pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and Rose felt the tremor in his body, fear and grief and relief all tangled together. I know, he whispered into her hair. I know. They stood there on the steps of the Hartley estate, wrapped in each other's warmth, while snow began to fall again, soft, silent, forgiving. And for the first time in 2 years, Lucas felt free. 6 months later, spring came to Missoula like a promise kept. The snow melted. The rivers ran high and wild. The mountain valleys bloomed with wildflowers, lupine and Indian paintbrush and glacier lilies, and the air smelled like pine and possibility. Rose stood in the doorway of her new shop, breathing in the morning. Petal and Thorn had moved to a bigger space on Higgins Avenue. 2 stories, big windows, exposed brick walls. It was bright and warm and filled with flowers, and every morning when Rose unlocked the door, she still couldn't quite believe it was real. Lucas had helped. Not with money. Rose had refused that, fiercely, needing to prove she could do this on her own. But with labor. He'd painted the walls, built the display shelves, installed the new lighting. He'd worked beside her every day, sleeves rolled up, covered in dust and paint, smiling in a way she'd never seen him smile before. He'd started his own company, Hartley Consulting, specializing in corporate ethics and fraud prevention. It was small, scrappy, built from scratch, but it was his, and he was happy. They'd moved in together in April. A small apartment above the shop. cozy and imperfect in theirs. Rose still woke up sometimes in the middle of the night, heart racing, afraid it was all a dream. But then she'd feel Lucas beside her, warm and solid and real, and the fear would fade. The door chimed. Lucas walked in, carrying 2 coffees and a paper bag from the bakery down the street. He was dressed casually, jeans, flannel shirt, work boots, and his hair was longer now, curling slightly at the edges. He looked younger, lighter. "Morning," he said, kissing her cheek. "Morning," Rose replied, smiling. They sat together at the small table near the window, watching the town wake up. People walking dogs, students heading to the university, cyclists weaving through traffic. It was ordinary, beautiful, theirs. "I got a call this morning," Lucas said, breaking the comfortable silence. "From my dad." Rose's smile faded. What did he want? To apologize. Lucas took a sip of his coffee, his expression unreadable. "James pled guilty. He's going to prison. And Dad said he was wrong, that I did the right thing." Rose reached across the table, taking his hand. "How do you feel?" Lucas was quiet for a long moment. Sad, relieved, angry, grateful, all of it at once. "That's allowed." "Yeah." He smiled faintly. "Yeah, it is." They sat there, hands intertwined, watching the morning light spill through the windows and turn everything gold. Rose thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. Lonely, afraid, convinced she'd never trust again. And she thought about the man Lucas had been. Broken, bitter, lost in his own anger. They'd found each other in the cold, in the silence, in the middle of betrayal and grief. And somehow, impossibly, they'd built something warm. "I love you," Rose said quietly. It was the first time she'd said it out loud. Lucas looked at her, and the expression on his face was so tender it made her chest ache. "I love you too," he said. "I think I have since the first time you said Merry Christmas to me. Like you actually meant it." Rose laughed, tears pricking her eyes. "I did mean it." "I know." They finished their coffee in comfortable silence, and when the shop opened for the day, they worked side by side, Rose arranging bouquets, Lucas updating the website, both of them moving in the easy rhythm of people who'd learned to trust each other completely. That evening, they walked along the Clark Fork River, hand in hand, watching the sun set over the mountains. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold, and the air smelled like summer coming. "Do you ever regret it?" Rose asked. "Losing the company, your family." Lucas stopped walking, turning to face her. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Not for a second," he said. "I lost a company, but I found a life. I found you. And that's worth more than anything they could have given me." Rose kissed him, slow and deep and full of everything she couldn't put into words. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling, both crying a little, both overwhelmed by the impossible beauty of second chances. They walked home as the stars came out, and the smell of pine needles and frost drifted on the evening breeze. The same smell that had once reminded Rose of the year she stopped believing in second chances. But now it smelled like something else, like healing, like hope, like home. And as they climbed the stairs to their small apartment, Rose realized something. She believed again. Not in fairy tales or perfect endings or love that never hurt, but in the quiet, steady courage it took to try again, to trust again, to choose vulnerability over safety, connection over isolation, hope over fear. She believed in Lucas, and she believed in herself, and that was enough. The end. If this story touched you, Leave your rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for the next journey.